You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. 10 years had passed since I last saw Madison. In that time, I'd completely rebuilt my life. I wasn't the same man who returned from Syria, broken and betrayed. The years of hard work, self-reflection, and determination had turned me into someone new, someone unrecognizable to the person I used to be. I stood outside the venue of our college reunion, adjusting the cuffs of my custom-tailored suit. My security firm had grown into a successful business, and tonight was about celebrating that success. The years had been kind to me in many ways, but there was always a part of me that felt like I was still carrying a weight: Madison's betrayal. When I walked into the ballroom, heads turned. The energy in the room shifted. People who hadn't noticed me before now stopped mid-conversation, their eyes trailing after me. I wasn't just a regular guy in a suit anymore. I commanded the space, my posture straight, my demeanor calm, like I belonged here. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt like I did. The old friends and acquaintances who gathered around me were all smiles, asking about the business, my success, what I had been up to. But there was something in the air, something palpable, that reminded me I wasn't here for them. This night was about something else. It was about closure. I spotted her across the room before she saw me. Madison. She was standing with a man, a soft-looking guy, someone who didn't have the sharp edges that came with years of military service, someone who looked like he might have been her future. His name was Sean, and I didn't need to be told to know that. He wasn't me. Madison caught my eye, and for a brief second, her face flickered with something like regret, something that vanished almost instantly. She put on that polished smile of hers, the one she always wore when she was pretending everything was fine, when she didn't want anyone to see the cracks beneath her perfect facade. "Tyler," she said, walking up to me, extending her hand. "It's so good to see you again." I didn't take her hand. I just stood there, letting the tension stretch between us, feeling the years of resentment build up inside me. The woman who had once been my wife, who had shattered my world, was standing here as if she hadn't destroyed everything we had. "Madison," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "You look, well." She laughed, that same fake laugh I remembered all too well. "Thank you. I'm doing great. Life's been really good, and it looks like you're doing amazing too." I glanced at Sean, who stood a little too close to her, like a puppy waiting for approval. He had no idea what this was about. To him, I was just another ghost from Madison's past, someone who no longer mattered. "Yeah, things have changed a lot for me," I said, glancing back at her. "I've built something. I've become something different." Her smile faltered for a split second, but it was gone before I could register it. "I'm so glad to hear that," she said quickly, her voice dipping into the tone of false charm. "You always worked so hard. I'm proud of you." Proud. The word hung in the air between us, like a heavy fog. I wanted to scream, to tell her how much her betrayal had hurt, how her leaving me while I was at war had almost broken me. But I didn't. Instead, I watched her, observed the way she fawned over Sean, and I realized she hadn't changed. She was still the same Madison, still trying to make herself feel better by pretending the past never happened. "Madison," I said, my voice quieter now, more deliberate. "I know what you're doing, but I'm not interested in pretending with you." Her eyes widened for just a moment, a flash of surprise. But then she smoothed her features back into place, as if she'd been expecting it all along. "What do you mean?" "I'm just trying to reconnect. We had some good times, didn't we?" I saw right through her. This wasn't about reconnecting. It was about convenience. Sean was a soft landing for her, a new version of what she thought she wanted, and she had no intention of dealing with the wreckage she'd left behind. "You're pretending like it didn't happen," I said, my voice thick with the bitterness I had worked so hard to bury. "You're pretending like you didn't tear me apart and leave me for someone who could give you a future." Her expression shifted, just for a second, but she recovered quickly, the mask slipping back into place. "I don't think it's fair to bring all of that up now. This is a celebration, Tyler. Can't we just—" "No," I cut her off, shaking my head. "You don't get to pretend like we're friends now, or that we have any kind of past that matters. Not after what you did." She opened her mouth, as if she was about to say something, but the words didn't come. Sean looked uncomfortable, glancing between us, not sure what to do. "I think you should go," I said, my tone final. "You and your boyfriend can enjoy the rest of the night. It's clear you don't need me here." Madison stood frozen for a moment, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a crack in her armor. It was a brief moment, but it was enough. She wanted to say something, something to bridge the gap between us, but she didn't. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes downcast, and turned to walk away. I watched her go, feeling the weight of everything that had happened between us, the years of betrayal, pain, and finally, release. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt free. Madison had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. And as I stood there, watching her fade into the crowd, I realized I was done with her. I was done with the past. I was ready to move forward. I had just finished a long day at the office when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but something about it made my chest tighten. I hesitated before answering. "Tyler, it's Erica," the voice on the other end said, tentative but urgent. "I need to tell you something, and you need to hear it from me, not from anyone else." Erica? Madison's ex-best friend, the one person who had always kept her secrets, the one who had stayed in the background, watching as our marriage fell apart. I'd heard little from her since Madison left. I never expected her to reach out. "Go ahead," I said, bracing myself. "I don't know if you've ever wondered what happened when you were away, but you should know the truth. Madison wasn't waiting for you to come home, Tyler. She wasn't even loyal to you." I sat down hard, the words sinking into my bones like ice. "What are you talking about?" "She was seeing someone else. Doug, a married real estate agent. She'd been seeing him for months while you were deployed. Weekends away, hotel stays. She even got an apartment with him." Erica's voice shook as she spoke. "I didn't know how to tell you, but I can't stay quiet anymore." I felt the room spin. Doug? I knew that name. He was the kind of guy Madison had always gravitated towards, successful, polished. And here I was, thousands of miles away, risking my life for a woman who had moved on before I even returned. Erica continued, her voice lower now. "She also had a divorce agreement drafted, Tyler, while you were still serving. She was planning to leave you before you even got back." I couldn't breathe. A divorce agreement? Drafted while I was fighting in Syria? My mind raced as the betrayal settled in. It wasn't just a slip-up. It wasn't just a mistake. Madison had planned this. She had plotted her exit long before I'd ever even thought about coming home to her. "You deserve to know, Tyler," Erica's voice cracked. "She wasn't waiting for you. She was just waiting for the right time to leave." I sat there, the weight of her words crashing down on me. How could I have been so blind? I had thought that I was the one who'd been left behind, that maybe I was just too focused on my work, too lost in the mission to see the cracks forming in our marriage. But this was deliberate. I felt sick, like everything I had built with Madison had been a lie. The love, the promises, the future we planned, none of it had ever been real. She had been counting the days until I left, so she could finally be free. "Thanks for telling me, Erica," I managed to say, my throat dry. "I need some time to process this." "Of course, Tyler," she replied quietly. "I'm sorry." I hung up the phone, staring at the blank screen in my hands. The silence in my apartment felt suffocating, the air thick with the truth. Madison had betrayed me, not just with Doug, but with the entire idea of our marriage. She'd never been mine to begin with. My head was spinning as I stood up, pacing around the room. The anger bubbled up inside me, but it wasn't just anger at Madison. It was anger at myself, for believing in her, for trusting her, for thinking I could have it all. Everything about my past with her, every moment I had thought was real, suddenly felt hollow. The man I thought I was, the man I had been for her, was nothing more than a shadow of a lie. I needed to confront her. I had to face the reality of what had happened, even if it meant confronting my worst fears. There would be no more running from the truth. Madison's betrayal had shattered the life I thought I knew, and now it was time to rebuild. Again. Only this time, it wasn't for her. It was for me. I pulled my phone out and began drafting a message to Madison, knowing that nothing would ever be the same. I sat in front of my computer, staring at the login screen of the shared cloud account Madison and I had used. The account had been full of old memories, pictures, documents, a life we had shared. It had been easier to pretend that the past was still intact, but the truth was starting to unravel faster than I could process it. After Erica's call, I knew I needed to see the evidence for myself. I had spent too many years trusting Madison, and now I needed the truth. The full truth. I entered the password. It took a moment for the screen to load, and then I was in. I clicked through the folders, past photos of vacations, family dinners, and pictures of us that once made me smile. My fingers hesitated as I clicked on a folder labeled Private. The sound of the mouse's click echoed too loudly in my quiet apartment. The first file I opened nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. It was a photo of Madison and Doug, taken in a hotel room. They were laughing, their faces close, their hands intertwined. It was a casual shot, too casual to be anything other than a shared moment between lovers. I scrolled through more pictures. Weekends away, Doug's arms wrapped around Madison, their faces glowing in the way people look when they're in love. There was one of her wearing a swimsuit, her body pressed against his, both of them at the beach, seemingly unaware of the camera. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I continued searching, I found the file I was dreading, a draft divorce agreement, dated months before I was scheduled to return. It was sitting there in black and white, ready to be filed once I was back from my deployment. The terms were set. Madison had already planned her departure, and I had been nothing but a placeholder in her life. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of the documents settle on me. The betrayal was far deeper than I had imagined. The affair was one thing, but the premeditated divorce, the planning, it was like everything had been a lie. She had made sure to escape while I was serving overseas, too consumed with survival to see the cracks forming back home. She had never been truly invested in us. It was all just a game for her. The anger inside me surged, but I fought it down, feeling a cold numbness take its place. I needed to keep control. I needed to understand this, to confront it. I took a deep breath and opened the email function. I attached everything, the photos, the documents, everything I'd found. I typed out a single line. I need to remember this. For me. For closure. I hit send, the message going to my personal email for safekeeping. If anything, I needed the proof, not just for revenge, but to make sure I never forgot how deep the betrayal had gone. I sat back in the chair, the dim light of the screen casting shadows around me. This was my reality now. Madison's betrayal had shattered the image of the woman I had loved. She wasn't just someone who left me. She had orchestrated it. I closed the laptop, the weight of it all settling like concrete in my chest. It wasn't just the pain anymore. It was the truth, and truth, no matter how ugly, was something I couldn't escape. I wasn't broken yet. But this was the beginning of something. I wasn't sure what it would be, but I knew I had to face it, head on. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Not now. Not ever again. It was a Wednesday afternoon when she showed up, the last person I expected to see standing in the doorway of my office. Madison. I didn't even have time to react before she entered, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Her posture was poised, like she was still trying to command a space she thought she belonged in. Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker behind them, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by that practiced smile she'd perfected years ago. "Tyler," she greeted, her voice cool, but there was something strained in it, as if she was forcing herself to appear confident. "I was hoping we could talk." I didn't stand up. I didn't move at all. The air between us felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. A decade of silence, of resentment, now hanging over us. "What is there to talk about?" I finally said, my tone calm, controlled. She seemed to struggle with the answer, her eyes darting to the side as if trying to gather the right words. I owe you an explanation," she said slowly. "I didn't handle things the right way. I cut her off. An explanation? After everything, that's what you've come here for." I pushed my chair back slightly, leaning forward, trying to keep the rage at bay. "You think you can just waltz in here, apologize, and make everything okay? You left me to fight a war while you were already planning your escape, and now you want to explain it all away?" Her expression shifted, just a little. She blinked, but I could see the familiar defensiveness creeping into her. "I wasn't thinking straight," she said, a hint of pleading in her voice. "I was lonely, Tyler. You weren't there. I never knew if you were coming back." I felt the anger start to stir in my chest. Lonely? After everything I gave her? After everything I sacrificed? I shook my head. You weren't lonely, Madison. You were bored. You chose comfort over loyalty. And you used me as an excuse to justify it. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as though I had hit her. I didn't care. She needed to hear this, and I wasn't going to back down. "You don't get to turn this into a pity party," I continued, my voice unwavering. You weren't stuck with a man who could die any day. You were stuck in a life you didn't want, and instead of being honest with me, you chose to go out and find someone else. Madison's hands trembled slightly at her sides, but she stood her ground. I didn't plan it, Tyler, she said, her voice thickening. It just happened, and I made a mistake, but I didn't know how to fix it. You were so focused on your mission. I needed someone there, someone who could give me a future. And you found that with Doug, I said, my words cutting through the silence. Someone else's husband. She flinched at the mention of Doug, but she didn't deny it. I was confused, she muttered, looking down at the floor. I didn't think things through. I made a mistake. A part of me wanted to reach across the desk, to grab her and shake her until she understood how deep the betrayal had gone. But I didn't. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. You made a choice, I said, my voice quieter now. And I was never part of that choice. You weren't afraid of me dying, Madison. You were afraid of losing your comfort, your stability. And when you realized I was no longer part of the picture you had in mind, you started making moves behind my back. Her eyes watered, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. Because in that moment, everything I said was the truth. I sat back in my chair, crossing my arms. I'm done pretending with you. This conversation is over. I looked at her one last time, my eyes cold and resolute. Go back to your life, Madison. Don't come back here again. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She turned, her shoulders slumped, and walked out of my office, the door clicking shut behind her. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. The woman I had loved was gone, and I wasn't the man I used to be. And as I sat there in my office, the weight of the past finally starting to lift, I knew this was the moment I had reclaimed control of my life. The weeks that followed Madison's confrontation in my office were a blur of anger, confusion, and disbelief. I kept running through everything in my head, our past, the lies, her betrayal. At first, it felt like I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of the emotions. But slowly, I began to take control. I threw myself into my work. My security firm, which had been my anchor before, became my lifeline again. I spent long hours strategizing, overseeing operations, and building relationships with clients. It wasn't just a job, it was my mission, my purpose. But I knew that focusing solely on work wasn't enough. I needed to rebuild the person who had been lost during all those years with Madison, the person who had trusted too easily, given too much. I needed to rediscover myself. I signed up for therapy. It was uncomfortable at first, but I knew it was necessary. Sitting in a small office with a stranger across from me, I finally said the words I had been holding back for so long. I don't know who I am anymore. The therapist nodded, encouraging me to explore those feelings. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to feel. I didn't have to hold everything in. It was okay to be vulnerable. Alongside therapy, I took up physical training. I started running again, pushing myself harder each day. The pounding of my feet on the pavement became a way to clear my mind, to focus on something that was purely mine. I also hit the gym regularly, lifting weights and training my body to be as strong as I wanted to be emotionally. It was hard at first, but with each drop of sweat, I felt myself healing. But the most surprising part of my healing process came when I started mentoring young veterans. I had always respected the men and women who served before me, and now I had the chance to help guide them. These young soldiers, fresh from the front lines, were struggling with their own versions of pain and trauma. I saw parts of myself in them, the same loneliness, the same fight to move forward. In helping them, I realized I was healing too. It became clear that Madison's betrayal had set me on a new path, a better one. I had lost myself in her, in our marriage, but now I was finding the man I was always meant to be. I knew it wouldn't happen overnight, and some days were harder than others, but I was no longer defined by her. I was rebuilding, not just in my career, but in my soul. I had a future now, one that was mine to create. It had been months since I'd last heard from Madison. After our confrontation in the office, I thought I had finally freed myself from her grasp. But like clockwork, her attempts to re-enter my life began. Slowly at first, texts, emails, and even social media messages. Each one was framed with the same apology. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I ignored every single one. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one chasing after her. I wasn't trying to fix something that wasn't broken. She had broken it, and she would have to deal with the consequences. I began to see her for what she truly was, someone who missed the version of herself she had when she was with me, not someone who wanted to be a better person. Her texts were full of longing for the past, but none of them reflected any real understanding of the hurt she caused. It wasn't until she convinced me to meet her in person that I thought maybe I owed myself some final closure. She insisted, pleading that she had changed, that she had learned from her mistakes. So, reluctantly, I agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown. I walked in first, trying to steady my nerves. Madison was already sitting at a table in the corner, wearing a soft expression that I recognized all too well. It was the face she wore when she wanted to manipulate, to make me believe everything could just be fixed. "Tyler," she said as I sat down, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I've missed you." I didn't respond at first, just studied her. I had spent so much of my life wanting her back, wanting us to work. But now, looking at her, I felt nothing but exhaustion. Madison shifted uncomfortably under my gaze, but she pressed on. "I know I messed up. I've done a lot of thinking. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was lonely, and I was afraid. I felt like I was trapped in a marriage with a man who could die any day. I needed stability. I needed someone who could be there for me." I let her speak, letting the words wash over me. It was the same tired excuses, the same narrative she'd been using since the moment she left. "Lonely?" I asked, cutting through the fog of her words. "Is that what you tell yourself now? That you were lonely?" I leaned in, my voice cold but steady. "No, Madison. You weren't lonely. You were bored. You chose comfort. You chose the easy way out, and you betrayed me in the process. You didn't want to wait for me to come home. You wanted to live a life without me." Her face twisted slightly, like my words had stung, but she didn't argue. "Tyler, I didn't mean for it to happen the way it did. I was just so lost, and Doug, he was there for me. He was everything you couldn't be, and You didn't need him," I interrupted, my voice rising slightly. "You needed someone to fill a void, and when you didn't get what you wanted from me, you went looking for it somewhere else. It wasn't about fear or loneliness, Madison. It was about comfort. You chose the easier path because you were too selfish to care about what it would do to me." She fell silent, her eyes searching mine, trying to find some trace of the man she once knew. But I wasn't that man anymore. The Tyler who would have forgiven her, that Tyler was long gone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but her voice cracked just a little, and I could hear the desperation creeping in. I stood up, pushing my chair back sharply. "You're not sorry, Madison. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it didn't work out the way you wanted. But this is over. I'm done." She stood too, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Tyler, please don't do this. We can fix this. No," I said, cutting her off. "You don't get to walk back into my life when it's convenient for you. You made your choice, and I'm not here to fix it anymore." I turned and walked away, the door closing softly behind me. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I realized something profound. I had finally let go. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need her to beg for my forgiveness. What I needed was the freedom to move on. And with that, I did. I was done with her. I was done with the past. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. It was a quiet morning when I realized that I was no longer the man Madison had left behind. For months, I had focused on rebuilding my life, throwing myself into work, therapy, and physical training. But I had never really understood how much I had changed, until that moment. I was sitting at my desk, finalizing the plans for a new expansion of my security firm, when I paused. A rush of clarity hit me. I wasn't just running a business anymore. I was building a legacy, something I could be proud of, something I had created on my own, without anyone holding me back. The Tyler who had once begged Madison to come back, the one who questioned his worth, was gone. In his place was a man who had reclaimed his strength, his purpose, and his future. Madison's betrayal had hurt me deeply, but it had also been the catalyst for the transformation I needed. I spent more time mentoring veterans who had struggled in ways I understood. I found purpose in giving them guidance, helping them navigate their own journeys of self-discovery. I'd never been this clear-headed, this focused. My company wasn't just a job, it was my mission. Then came Leah. She was different. Leah didn't see me as a project or as someone she needed to fix. She respected me, not just for my success, but for the man I had become. She didn't need me to shrink, to apologize for who I was, or to play a part in a story that wasn't mine. We spent more time together, our connection growing deeper with each passing day. She saw the strength in me that I hadn't even realized was there, and I began to see a future that didn't revolve around the scars from my past. It was about growth, about moving forward, about building something new and real. One evening after a quiet dinner, Leah asked me a question that pierced straight through to my soul. "Tyler," she said softly, her hand resting on mine, "if you could go back, would you stop marrying Madison? Would you erase all of it?" I looked at her, the weight of the question pressing down on me. The old part of me, the part that still carried pain from that betrayal, might have said yes, but now I saw everything clearly. I wouldn't change a thing. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I wouldn't change a thing." Madison's betrayal shaped me into who I am now. It pushed me to become someone stronger, someone who finally knows his worth. I'm not that man anymore, and I don't need to look back to see that. Leah smiled, a look of understanding in her eyes. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need to erase the past to find peace with it. I had grown stronger from those scars, and now I was ready for whatever the future held. I had let go of Madison. I had let go of the pain. And as I sat with Leah, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, I finally understood what it meant to be free. I had found my purpose, and I was finally, truly whole. It had been a long time since I last thought about Madison, but that morning, as Leah and I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee, the question hit me like a bolt of lightning. "Tyler," she said, her voice soft but probing, "if you could go back, would you stop marrying Madison? Would you change anything?" I sat back in my chair, letting the question settle. For a moment, I was caught off guard. The weight of the past, of everything I had been through, was suddenly there in the room with us. I had carried it for so long, thought about it from every angle, every possible outcome. But I knew the answer now, clearer than I'd ever known before. "No," I said firmly. "I wouldn't change a thing." Leah looked at me, searching my face for an explanation. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," I said. The conviction in my voice surprised even me. Madison's betrayal hurt me more than anything, but it also made me into who I am now. It's not easy to admit, but the pain, it was a catalyst. Without it, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the man I am today. Leah's eyes softened as she reached across the table, her hand resting on mine. "I'm proud of you, Tyler." I smiled at her, a real smile, one that wasn't tainted by bitterness. For the first time in years, I felt free from the weight of regret, free from the shadow of Madison's betrayal. I spent so much time blaming myself, thinking I wasn't good enough, that maybe if I'd done things differently, she wouldn't have left. But now I see. "I was never the problem," I said, my voice steady. "It was her, and the things she did. But that's not my burden to carry anymore." Leah nodded, understanding. She knew the journey I had been on, the struggle to regain control of my life, my heart. She had been there for me, without pushing, without needing me to be anyone other than myself. And I had finally learned that I didn't need to go back. I didn't need to rewrite the past. What mattered was the future, the life I was building now, the person I had become, and the people I had around me who saw me for who I truly was. "I'm ready to move on," I said, looking Leah in the eyes. "For the first time, I'm ready to let go of all of it." Leah smiled, and in that moment, I knew that I was no longer the man who had been left behind. I was the man who had fought for himself, who had learned to thrive, and who had found peace. Madison's betrayal was no longer a part of me. It had been a painful chapter, but it was just that, a chapter. The book was still open, and I was ready to write the next part. With Leah by my side, and with the strength I had gained through all the pain, I knew that nothing from the past could hold me back anymore. The future was mine, and it was brighter than I ever imagined.